yourself. Now, you have to be honest with yourself. And I think oftentimes we're not honest with them. I don't have time to go to church. I've known people that were 20 minutes late coming to church every week. Every week. Every week.
Is it me?
No, it's me.
But those same people, I know for a fact, they would be at a high school football game 2 hours early. High school
not
football.
me. I'm late to work every day. So
No,
that's
But what was their priorities? The football game seemingly was more important than attending. Sir, do you agree? It seems that way. I'm not judging those people, and I'm not running them down. But it's just the fact, if we want, Daniel and I like to go to high school football games, okay? And you can just about guarantee we're not going to be late. Why? And one other thing, we're not going to leave early. Why? Because you might miss something, okay? You might miss something, okay? I've seen people in sporting events, and you're out on TV, that people get up and leave at the halfway through the end of the fourth quarter because the game's over, we're beat, and then all of a sudden they get out in their car and then they're trying to come back in because why? The game's not over. The team is coming back, you know. And if we don't attend services and we don't get there on time and we leave early, you might miss something. Okay.
Usually, well, I think every time there's a decision about everything. If you say yes to something, it means you've said no to something else. Sometimes you've said no to several other things.
We lived in Lancaster until 1972, and then I was 15 years old, and we moved to Broadtown. My grandparents had died in Lincoln County, and they had a country store for 42 years. They had got older and died, and Mother brought her brothers and sisters out, so we ran the country store in Crab Orchard, Broadtown. And so we had to go to different churches. We didn't go to Lancaster Church anymore. We'd always been to Lancaster. And so we go to different church, and these people were wonderful at this other church. But everything they did at that church was just to get it over with. Instead of singing 3 verses of song, we'd sing 2. We might drop it to 1, you know. Okay. The preacher was a good preacher, but he worked at the funeral home, and on Sunday afternoons he would go to the funeral home, okay, to work. Well, that's okay. His wife's mother was in the nursing home, had been in the nursing home for several years, okay? So after this is the gospel truth. After the Lord's Supper was over, the wife would get up and leave and not hear her husband preach and not finish the rest of the service. She did this every Sunday, okay? She would get in the car. Now, her mother's in the nursing home, no more ill than she was the day before or the Sunday before, you know, just kind of holding her own for a long time. In gravel parking lot, this lady would get in her car. Now, I'm 15 years old, okay? And my cousins are there and my brother. And all of a sudden you hear these gravels, and then it hits the blacktop, peeling rubber out of the church parking lot. Well, it's all us boys could do to keep from dying laughing. I mean, of course, we would be singing the song before the preaching, but she was burning rubber to get out of there. And the preacher then, after the invitation was given, and as the closing prayer was going, he was just like this. While the prayer's going, he walked to the back of the church building. He shook 1 or 2 hands and was gone, because he was going to work at the funeral home. But what was the aura that we were presented with?
Hurry,
Let's get it over with.
Yeah.
And you know what? That church is closed up now. It's boarded up for 15 years. Okay, and they were good people, but they never gave it enough attention. And so the young people come along, and they think, well, if it's all about just getting it over with, let's just don't even go. You know, don't you think so? Now that is an absolutely true statement, okay? Now we can have a same type. Now on the other hand, what if we came to church services and it never ended? You know, I mean, do you know what I'm saying? When I mean never end, I don't mean never, but I mean never.
I've been to a few that sing that way.
Deb and I went to Houston, Texas. We went to a Sunday school class, and the man talked for 1 solid hour. He told us to open our Bibles, and we did, and that was a waste of time. And he talked about conjecture, about different things that had nothing to do with what the Bible said for a solid hour. And it like never ended, you know. If I had a gun, I would have shot myself or him one. Not really, but it was, you know, you've heard classes like that. So we could go to extremes either way, can't we? So should we assemble as saints? Are we all in agreement with that? Is there a limitation on how often we should assemble? The New Testament Christians met what?
Daily.
Pretty much daily, didn't they? Pretty much daily. We would go into cardiac arrest if we went back into the first century and tried to be a Christian, wouldn't we? What? Tuesday evening? You'd go to your house? You know, Wednesday, Friday? Not Saturday, sure. Would we go into cardiac arrest? And we would say, those heretics, what are they doing? What did they come up with? Yes.
This may be way off track, I'm not sure, but you know, we may assemble more than you think we do
Yeah.
throughout the week.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you look back on this past week and
Yes.
who all did you meet up with, whether you were walking with them, hiking with them, motorcycle, you know what I'm saying?
I know, I agree.
And so I think
agree.
that probably we assemble
Yeah,
together.
I think you're right. And I think
More
those
than
are all
we might think.
very healthy. I think those are very healthy. Yes, sir.
When you said that, my first thought was that, you know, that they didn't have Friday night football games, high school football games. But Leanne and I we've been watching this documentary video on church history, or, well, I guess just following Jesus where he had gone. And this man walks through today Israel and shows all the different places. And one of the cities they walk by shows the big Colosseum where you would go and you'd see plays and you would see Olympic type things, even in Israel, which just shocked me. I never thought of sports or anything in Israel, but they had those things. So they had things that could pull them away too, but Christians didn't. They met daily and wanted that more than they wanted to go work at the funeral home or whatever. So,
and those people too, we forget about this. How long has canned food been available? Canned food that you put in the shelf. How long has it been available? Just guess. 100 years. 100 years they've had, and you've got refrigeration, just say 100 years, refrigeration. You've got processed foods, stuff that you can just reach in there. People in New York City pretty much go, in those big cities, they pretty much go to the market every day, don't they? Why? They don't have deep freezers and big refrigerators and stuff, because they most times have a 1 or 2 room apartment, and they have to go get fresh fruit just about every day. Most people do not live in palatial mansions in New York City. They live in small apartments. We go to Walmart typically, or Kroger, and what do? We buy $100, $150 worth of stuff, and bring it home, stock up the shelves. Don't go back for a few days, do we? That's typically how we operate here in Kentucky, and that's a good way to do. Those people had to spend a considerable amount of time. But what are we going to eat? What are we going to eat? There are no can of peas up in the cabinet, or can of corn up in the cabinet, or potatoes. That we can just take this little packet and open them up and put them in the water and put them in the microwave. They had to spend time gathering food, didn't they? Stuff that's a lot more important than a football game or a sporting event. What are we going to eat? But they managed to have time to meet daily, didn't they? They had opportunity. We have probably, it would seem like more free time than ever, but we have less time than ever, don't we? Now, can you imagine what a great thing it was when they invented the automatic washing machine? As opposed to the old wringer kind, or taking them down to the creek with the washboard. Can you imagine how time and labor intensive that was? We've got lots of conveniences. I used to talk to the people at work. They would continuously mad, some of them were. And I said, guys, when you go home and it's too hot in your house, what do you do? What do you mean? I said, well, I know what you do. You walk over and you take a little lever and you move it about 1/4 of an inch. Or you turn a little knob about 1/4 of an inch, don't you? And then what happens? The house gets cooler or it gets warmer. Used to, you went home and it was cold in the house. What'd you have to do?
built a fire.
Build a fire.
Yeah.
And first you got to clean the stove out. Get the ashes out there. Then you got to go round up the wood, And Deb and I had a neighbor years ago, great guy, but he was lazy. Oh, he's just so lazy. And every time you'd hear a blizzard coming in, he lived next door to us, you'd hear Jay start up the chainsaw. He never cut any wood till the blizzard was coming. And he would be out there in some of the most horrible weather. But he was lazy, and he just never really prepared. And so he had to cut a lot of wood during inclement weather. And I guess he never got hot cutting his wood like people that stored in the summer. But it's a job, okay? We've got lots of reasons to not miss church. But we're going to talk just a few minutes this end, if you don't mind, reasons
Shelby,
we maybe aren't
one of
missing
the
church.
things that I think it's more important that we want to be there than that somebody's checking up if
Amen.
we're there. And you were talking about meeting in people's homes. Well, there wasn't anybody checking the roll to see if they were there that day.
Right.
And I think that that's the important thing, is to encourage people to want to come instead of checking to see if they're there.
Yes.
I guess I have another question as far as this particular scripture. Are we talking about specifically assembling and studying the Bible and reading and praying and singing? I mean, are we talking about that sort of? I mean, I know we should come to church.
You're right. No,
I hope you know that
I know.
I'm not against coming to church. But I think we can get together, and we do, I think, most of us, in other occasions throughout the week, and encouraging and talking one another. And this is specifically talking about that, and whether it's going to see somebody in the hospital, or stuffing teddy bears, or whatever.
And none of us know what all the other people do, okay? But I think I can go out on the limb and say, you guys are not the problem, okay? You all are not the problem. You know, if the church gathers, you all will be here, you know, as a general. There are other people that I'm aware of that seemingly, to me, make very little effort to assemble with the saints, okay? They assemble part-time, okay, and briefly. There's people in here that I've been here with them, and I've been coming to church here since 2008, November 2nd, 2008 is our first trip in the building. Okay, 7 years now. And I still don't really know those people. And why? Because they assemble on Sunday morning. They come Sunday morning, and for whatever reason, I don't see them. And then they as soon as the bell sounds, they're gone, okay? And you don't really get a chance to. Plus, in Richmond, there's 400 people. If I talk to 5 people, 5 minutes, I've spent 25 minutes, and I've talked to 5 people, haven't I? Yes.
To speak to Lisa's point, I'm reading from the ESV, which version I like. Back into verse 24. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, which speaks exactly what she's talking about. And it says, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So it's speaking exactly to what Lisa's talking about, and simply getting together to encourage one another, to stir up one another in good works and in love.
And I think when you're stuffing teddy bears, I think that you are absolutely assembling. I think it's a wonderful work that you're doing. I think it's a work that Christ would approve of, that God would approve of, and I think that it's mutually beneficial to everybody that's there doing it, okay? Not just, probably more so than the child that the teddy bear's given to, even though that's a wonderful thing. Doing the food baskets, okay? Not everybody can come do the food baskets in the wintertime, okay? But those that come, it's a great work, okay? And it's very important that they assemble together and see these little kids and these people doing what they can to help, okay? Those are all, really good things.
Well, I was just thinking and talking about this, we're to be stirred up for love and good works. And I'm thinking about good works for what? Because I think we can go to the other extreme to where all we do is assemble with Christians.
Yeah, I agree. And I know people that do
never get
that.
out and do works with other people. I mean, we have to have contact with the world also.
I don't see that's there's a lot going on in Richmond. If you participate in everything that's going on in Richmond, you're going to be a busy boy or girl, aren't you? You're going to be.
Exactly.
And I told the other day, I said, it keeps Brian or somebody busy changing the marquee out there, don't they? I mean, the sign. That's a job. I mean, because there's this, and this is going on, and that's where it should be. I think that the Richmond church is healthy, and I think it's growing because of the things that's going on. Ron?
Well, anytime I enter into conversations that deal with these issues of attendance and these kind of traditional things that we engage in and we use as kind of quantifiable things to evaluate people, I'm always struck by Jesus. He was with the Pharisees were around. He's with his disciples, and they were criticizing him because his disciples did not wash their hands, did not ceremonially wash. And what he said to them was, "Go and learn what this means." And then he quoted Hosea, "I desire mercy and not sacrifice." And that was, that to me in a nutshell kind of crystallizes this question of, the things that we do that are kind of sacrificial, if you will, are much, much less important than the mercy that we extend to others. And so it's a question of our heart more than it is a question of the external things and attendance. But
I liken it to I've always thought, Joey, that whenever someone says, I've got to go to church, or what about someone says, I've got to go to church? Is there a difference? It's the same word. It's the exact same word. But when I first started dating Deb, okay, you know what? I had to go see her, okay? Why? Because I loved her, okay? Right from the get-go, I loved this little girl, and I've got to go see her, okay? And then I've got to make her my wife. And I tell her every day that I love her, okay? Not just on special occasions, not just on Mother's Day, or not just on her birthday. Why? Because she means the world to me. Don't you think that's what the church should be to? The church should mean the world to us, okay? That's my brothers and sisters in Christ. I'm not checking off if Ron's there, and I hate Ron because he missed on Wednesday night. That's not the point at all. I've got to be there because I know that I can be either a good or bad influence to those that see me not being there, you know? What if I came in here and I never did anything but just sat down here, never said a word, never answered a question, never participated in anything? I'm not judging that person, but for me, how can I do that? I love the church.
Some
Okay,
people
how
have
can
that
I?
personality though.
Well,
They just want
yeah,
to be left alone.
yeah, there are.
And
There
it's
are.
okay.
Yeah, it is.
And I think we overlook those people sometimes by judging
Yeah.
them, even subconsciously saying, well, they're not involved, they don't care, because they never do anything. But some people are that way, they
Yeah.
just want to be left alone.
I also think there are people that are doing worlds of things that are wonderful, good
Oh,
things
yeah.
that I don't know
I
about.
agree. We need to be out of the judging business completely. The quicker we can get out of the judging business, whether they be Baptist or Presbyterians or Muslim. My thought in the last several years with all the Muslim strife that's been is I wish those people knew about Jesus. That's my thinking. Not that we need to kill them all. I wish they knew about Jesus, okay? Because if they knew about Jesus and had the love of Christ in them, they wouldn't be killing anybody, okay? I wish they had the love of Christ in them.
Go ahead, Lena.
Did you have something?
Well, I think anytime we get together, it's important. We need to get together as much as we can for every reason. But nothing is going to take the place of when we come together for the purpose of worshiping God.
That's right. That's right. And that's where I draw back to my point. I've got to be there. I cannot miss out on this opportunity. Okay, I want to try to zip through these 10 things right quick.
I was
Yes,
going to
Ron.
say before Lena
Uh-huh.
that having said all these things that we've said, there's no question that you talked about the condition of your heart with respect to your relationship to death. That state of your heart is only cultivated by your presence with death. And we cultivate our hearts with our presence here.
Amen.
And in worship, especially in worship, being here and having this class is helpful.
Yes.
And talking to other people and kind of batting things around is helpful. But worship, when we're on our knees before God together, that is when our hearts are really, it seems to me, affected the most.
To beat this horse a little bit more, when you think about it, God requires two things. Number one, that we be His children. Number two, that we worship Him. That's God's requirement.
And you get things in worship that you can't get anywhere else. Last week, the song we sang at the end, I cried the whole way through, okay? Because somebody was smart enough to put words together that resonate in your heart, and it makes you cry, okay? Because you think about how much Christ loves you, okay? How much God loves you. And if I'd have been at home, I wouldn't have got those words, okay? I would have missed out on that opportunity to cry. And when I hear sometimes announcements about someone that's gravely ill, you have a pain goes in my heart, don't you? You have a pain that goes in your heart because you love this person and you want nothing but the best for this person. And the news sometimes just gets worse and worse and worse, okay? And I know when I've been sick, and I know that people are praying for me, and I really like it. Do you all? I really like it. And you know, when people say, I covet your prayers, or I really want your prayer. Yes, yes. And everybody will pray in a different way and use a different manner. And some songs you may not ever shed a tear in assembly. But I'm glad that I can. I'm glad that I still can shed a tear at the Lord's Supper or there's something I hear. It's very important. People don't go to church as often because of greater affluence. People have more money, don't they? More money gives them more opportunities, don't they? We sometimes consider ourselves poor, just barely get by, when that's just not true. Statistically in the world, how many people are there? 7 billion? 7 billion people, maybe a few more. I don't know exactly. I don't know if anybody knows exactly. But how many of those people have houses like we have? Very few. Very, very, very few. Okay? Most people, I don't know how many percentage of people get by on less than $1 a day, you know. There's people that don't have water that's fit to drink, okay? Can you imagine not having water that's fit to drink? You've got more water than you can drink in your house right now, don't you? We have to be careful because we eat too much. Because we got too much to eat. And it's a choice. We throw away food oftentimes, don't we? Why? Can't eat it all. You can't eat it all. Got a big Sunday dinner, got a big meal, Thanksgiving, but you can't eat it all. You got to throw it out. You know, we are so fortunate, and I think we almost stand in double jeopardy because of the affluence that we have, and maybe it's not always practical to share, but sometimes we kind of like to hold on to it, don't we? We all kind of like to hold on to it. People don't assemble as often because of they have more money. Number 2, higher focus. Go ahead.
You know, Jesus speaks to that very affluent point when the rich young ruler, I think we call him, asked him about, you know, I've done all these things.
Yeah.
I've done the checklist. I've kept the commandments. What do I lack? And what his problem was that he was so affluent. And Jesus knew, and it's true for us too, that is a huge impediment to our trusting and depending on God. And of course now Jesus says, when his disciples question him, who can enter the kingdom of heaven, he says, it's true. It's very, very, very difficult for this guy because of his wealth, but everything is possible with God. So it's possible, but man,
Jesus
Jesus
describes a judgment scene. He doesn't say anything about church attendance, does he, in Matthew chapter 25. He said, did you visit the poor? Did you visit me when I was in prison, sick? Did you feed me? Did you clothe me? That's what the judgment scene, Jesus says that we will be judged by the words that he has spoken. So those things are vitally important. And I think that as a general rule, those of us in the United States come up short. We come up short because we like what we have. And we oftentimes hoard it up, and we're very, very interested in leaving it to our children, or maybe our grandchildren, or some cause that we love. And you know, people say, well, it's my money, I can do what I want to with it. Well, it is while you're here. But it will disappear very quickly. Higher focus on kids' activities. There are kids that are playing on travel teams that, to me, are not really getting much of a childhood upbringing. Because why? They play ball all the time, okay? And they like to play ball. But I tell you what, I've seen a lot of kids that burn out by the time they're about sophomores or juniors in high school because they've just been playing so much. Kids' activities take a lot of time, and lots of times people neglect what? Neglect church. They neglect church, don't they? I told them at Garrett County, I've announced the boys and girls basketball games at Garrett County for many years, probably 22 or 3 years. And several years ago, we kind of got into a little thing that we wanted to play some ball games on Wednesday night. And I told the principal and the superintendent, I said, guys, you don't need to be having these games on Wednesday night. 'Cause a lot of kids don't go to church, I understand, but a lot of them do. And I said, and I do, and said, I don't know what about you all, if you do or not, but I'm going to go to church, and these kids need to be not punished by missing a ball game so they can go to church. They don't have any ball games on Wednesday night at Garrett County. Not that just because I said it, but they felt the same way, okay? Now, that doesn't mean we can change the world, but we can stand up for what we think. The church assembles on Wednesday night, the kids need to be there, and I'm going to be there. We need to, who needs to be the adult in the situation? Mom and dad. You love your kids, but you all make the decisions, okay? And you make the decisions, and I know you will, and I know you do. Make them with all the information, the best information you've got at that time. Now, 20 years from now, you might say, oh, the decision. Because I look back on some of the things I did with kids, and I think that's stupid. You know, it's too harsh, or it's too lenient, or whatever. But just make the best decisions you can. The children don't need to be in charge, do they? And we love little kids. We love them to death. They're not in charge. More travel. There are more people traveling today, this says, than for business or pleasure than ever before. Is that true? That's, again, our affluence. We can do these ball games and stuff because of our affluence. And it costs a lot of money to go spend the weekend and play ball. It costs a lot of money to do that, okay? And if you do that weekend after weekend, it costs a lot. People have more opportunities to travel. And oftentimes this can be, more people have boats. They can go fishing for the weekend. They can play golf. More money allows people to do things. And so what happens, church becomes less important, doesn't it? And it kind of gets pushed to the back burner oftentimes. Number 4 here, blended and single parent families. If you have a child that's mother and daddy are divorced, and the daddy lives in Ohio and the mother lives in Kentucky, and every other weekend the child stays with the daddy, I don't know if this happens or not, but how often could that child be in church? The best you could do would be half the time, wouldn't it? If he spends every other weekend with daddy in another county or state or something like that. So sometimes that keeps people from attending, okay? Ben Price that went canoeing with us the other day, the boy from Lancaster, he has a daughter, and his wife is a terrible, his ex-wife is a terrible influence on that child because she gets drunk and has parties, and this girl is 20 years old now, and Ben hates it because of course she's got an apartment of her own now, but when she was with Ben, she had this good influence. She'd go into church when the doors were open every time. But when she was with Mama, the Mama's having parties with people drunk, there. And it worries Ben to death, and Ben has to deal with that because of that's just the way the situation is. Online options, number 5. Can you see church online? Do you know people that, I talked to a man the other day, and I said, you still go to this particular church and travel with? He said, no, I've not been there for years. I knew he'd fallen out with them, and so I didn't know the reasons, but I knew that, and so I was asking him about it. And he said, I just usually watch it on TV. I just usually watch church on TV. Is it the same watching church on TV or online? It's not the same. It's not the same. I've tried to listen to lessons online, and now if I was bedridden or confined to the home, that would be probably a different situation. But you know what happens when I'm listening to it online? Guess. What happens?
Sidetracked.
I get sidetracked. Do you all? You get sidetracked. Rusty?
I think that the mistake that we make, and I know what you mean by that statement there, the 10 reasons. But we are the church. We don't go to church. I mean, right. we all know that, but we all know that that's what everybody refers it to. So I understand.
Right.
But I think we make the mistake in thinking that church is mostly for God. I think we do that for God. I know this sounds radical, and I don't mean it to be, but I think that the edification that we get among each other may be the primary reason that because God doesn't need us.
Right.
He doesn't need us. We need Him.
Right. Absolutely.
And so we come together for the purpose of edification, and I don't know how you do that online,
Right.
And I don't know how you do that via television evangelism or anything else. If it's edification is the primary reason, which is what I understand Scripture to say, you have to have each other. And whether that be on Sunday morning and Wednesday night only, I think maybe be limiting even that, as you discussed already. But I think edification has to be the primary reason. You can't do that without being together.
I do think our primary reason for being here is to worship God. But having said that, and I'm agreeing with Rusty, when you asked the question originally, what popped into my mind was, there's so much ancillary that happens, even when that's my intent, is to worship God, that is impossible to duplicate in a non-participatory medium like television. I came in, I sat down, Lena insists on hugging me. Well, that's not going to happen if I'm in the living room watching TV. And there are millions of those examples every morning. And it just doesn't happen. It can't happen on TV.
I have known people that truly, without any question in their mind, would have been excused for not being in worship because they were too sick to be there, okay? People that have just gotten out of the hospital, people that are terminally ill. I've seen people that are terminally ill continuously attend services when they're barely able to put one foot in front of them. We had an elder in Lancaster, bless his heart, he had emphysema, horrible, and he was in his late 80s, and he walked just like this. Just like this. But he never missed, okay? Why did he not miss? Because he wanted that. He wanted to be with his brothers and sisters in Christ, okay? What a wonderful example he was. Those people know that there's...
You got them here.
Yes, we absolutely have them here. We absolutely have them here. People in wheelchairs and people that barely can get around, okay? And they're here. And you look up and you sometimes feel pretty guilty whenever you say, and I've got a little headache or a little sniffle or something, and I don't assemble. Nothing can replicate actual being there, okay? It's just that's why people go to basketball games. That's why they go to race car matches and baseball, whatever there is, because you were there whenever it happened. So church is the same way, the attendance. The cultural disappearance of guilt. Is anybody guilty anymore, seems like, from if you watch the news? And you can go out and kill 27 people, I can, with a gun right now, and all you got to do is say, my daddy whipped me when I was little. Well, God bless you, you're free to go. Or I was hooked on drugs. Well, God bless you, you're free to go. Well, to me, if you say you're hooked on drugs, that makes it worse, but not anymore. It seem like with society anymore, it's just, well, that's a good reason that you killed 27 people. That's a really good reason, you know. Or you play violent video games, or you did whatever, okay? People just will not man up, okay? I was raised in the generation where if you did something wrong and you got caught, you know what you better do? Start telling the truth as quick as you can, okay? Because why, Titus? It's going to get worse if you don't. You've already done this bad thing, Shelby Roy, and now you've lied about it. Now the ante's just been raised, hasn't it? It's been raised, and now we're going to get whipped for lying and that's a good thing. That is a good thing. There needs to be consequences for our actions, okay? Because some stuff don't really matter. You know, if you break the lampshade, it's not the end of the world, okay, if you break the lampshade, okay? But there still needs to be some consequences for it, don't there? Because what happens whenever trouble comes in your marriage? Then we got a divorce here. We got a divorce here. I'm unwilling to listen to the boss at work. What do we got here? Oh, you're no longer working there, Shelby. There's consequences, aren't there? And then the judgment day, you refuse to listen because it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. And Jesus says, depart from me, you worker. There's consequences. I heard a speaker one time at a high school commencement say, life is hard, and the quicker you kids realize it, the better off you'll be. Is that a true statement? Life is hard, and the sooner you realize it, the better off you'll be. Is that a true statement? It absolutely is. It absolutely is. When I went to the post office, they expected me to come every day, 6 days a week. I'd have to work on Sunday, but they wanted me there 6 days a week at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, it's not very easy to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's hard. But I wanted the job, and so I stayed with it, okay? Ron?
I know this is not on the list, but you were talking about consequences, and I guess we're talking about why people don't come to church. Jesus, of course, says that it's the sick who need a physician, and so we acknowledge that all of us here are sick in that way. But I mean, are there people that don't come because they've been insulted or just insulted, they've been ticked off by their neighbor in the pew next to them, and they just don't come? I mean, does that happen a lot, or is that just...
Well, I've heard instances of it happening, and I've known instances. People
is that happening more now, or
I don't know if it's more or less. I really can't say, but I've always said that my thinking is if Jesus can go to the cross for me, I can do whatever's asked of me to do. Okay? Don't you think so? If Jesus is willing to go to the cross for Shelby Roy Hawkins, if they need somebody to say a last minute prayer or wait on the Lord, so I've always told the boys that's making if you ever need anybody, you come and get me, okay? Because if Jesus can go to the cross for me, I can get up and say a prayer for the offering or help pass the Lord. You know, instead of that, well, Ron never does, and I do it every time, you know. You know how people are. Some people, they're checking it off, you know.
I'm only asking because I've ticked off a lot of people over the years. And
Rusty.
But Ron has hit something that's really, really significant, and that is, people say, well, I know those people that go to church down there, and I'm just as good as they are. And we want to compare ourselves to somebody else. But the question is, are you as good as Jesus?
Right.
And
Right.
you need to try to.
That's who you need to give me, Jesus.
Yeah.
Rusty.
I know this is sort of from this other perspective of this, from us that are here already, but I can't help but think, you know, you always hear about people saying we need to reach the unchurched or whatever, the people that, and I don't think we realize what kind of person, and this is going to sound weird, but whenever those people come, sometimes they're not the most lovely people in the world, right?
That's right.
They're the people that maybe are the drug addicts and all these things like that, and I think we're torn as Christians, even though we shouldn't be. You know, Jesus went into the most unlovely people, but we just think, you know, I bet there's people that if I really, really, really worked real hard on, I could get them to come. Why do I do that? You know, it's because sometimes I think, well, I don't want my kids next to that person or something like that. And I struggle with that part of it, is that there could be a lot more people here, but we are the rich. You know,
Absolutely.
every one of us. I mean, we are the rich, and the people who aren't are not the most desirable people in the world. And sometimes when I think about we're going to reach out to our community, do we really? I mean, we do. I know we should, but sometimes there's something inside of us that says, I don't know. You know, do I put a pedophile in the church when I know my children are here and things like that? I don't know. That's just a comment that I thought I would say. I don't know what
we struggle with. For instance, me, I used to have to deliver mail to the places where people were drunk. Okay, there's bars in Nicholasville, and it repulses me. Okay, to be around drunks, because I've been around drunks when I was younger. You know, and I've seen drunks, cousins and uncles and stuff like that, and I don't like it. Okay, I don't like being around it. I don't like the smell of it. I don't like the attitude of most of these people that are drinking. It repulses me, and it's hard for me to deal with that. Yes, sir.
I will just very quickly, because I think that was the second
Yeah,
deal,
it is.
but, you know, I think we somewhat digressed a little bit from the comment that was
Well,
on
we
the
did.
board. It's, we are committed Christians, not.
Yeah, to be a Christian.
And to me, it's just because they're not receiving that love and encouragement that they have been need. And so my question was gonna be, which we'll just, I guess,
Well, that was our.
if I'm a
go down the
committed
line.
Christian and I get discouraged, what should I do?
I think that there's people you can talk to, okay? I think certainly you can talk to the elders, you can talk to other Christians. You can, do you think sometimes that the church you might be attending is not a good fit?
Absolutely.
I think it could be not a good fit.
But sometimes in the areas in which we live, we don't have
I agree with that. Ron, what, you had something? Just shut up. Okay, Joey.
I was just gonna say that someone over there said, you know, that Christ said to the judgment, did you visit the poor, did you visit those in prison? Well, the people in prison are guilty or something.
Yes.
And all of those things, and I think that if there's a church busy, the people in that church doing those things, then I wanna be a part of it.
Right.
But if it's dead on arrival, then I need to look somewhere else.
People are finding reasons not to assemble as regular as they used to. That's a fact, okay? And it's a sad fact, because we've talked about here this morning a lot how vitally important I think it is. And I think you all feel the same way. It's vitally important that we assemble with the saints. And I think we need to encourage each other to good works, don't you? We need to encourage each other and strive to be the best people and as much of like Christ as we